This is a story about something very horrible that happened. There was a very powerful religious leader. He was very respected at the church. He didn't start out as a powerful religious leader. He started out as a member of a church. I can't give exact details or locations, but he knew the scripture better than anybody in that whole church, it seemed. He had a magical way of bringing scriptures to life. And he got into a disagreement, long story short, with the pastor at the church. And he left, and he started his own church on his property. He had a house in the woods. I can't believe this happened still. But people actually left the church to go attend his classes that he started because he was so respected at the church because of his biblical knowledge. And it started out small. He had about 15 people attend, but when people heard him preach and heard him bring how his ability to bring scriptures to life and preach was impeccable. People kept coming and coming, and it seemed like the group started growing. It grew from a group of 10 people to a group of 60 people. Kept going on for about months. He just kept growing and expanding. It's like he started the church from his words that started small but expanded, and he pretty much started a cult. They started listening to him, and they actually started worshiping him and believing everything that he said was through God. And they started listening to everything he said. His power of manipulation. And he basically had them all turning on each other. I didn't think much of it. When he was giving one of his speeches, when he was preaching and teaching one of his classes, his Bible studies that he held, pretty much asked him a simple question. I didn't think nothing of it. And then after class, one of the other people from the class came up to me and told me not to do that. I wouldn't question him if I were you. Just don't do that. It's like they're all against each other. Like when somebody stepped out of line, somebody would tell David about them. Crap, I said his name. For real. I might as well keep saying his name now. Pretty much, they would all start snitching on each other, and they'd tell David everything they heard. And as time went on, they were worshiping him like he was a god. I don't know how he was doing this, how this happened, but it's like they held on to everything he said. I didn't understand it myself, but I was scared to leave. It turned into a club of 80 people, and they basically all listened to everything he said. And I just was the only one that seemed to not listen to him, that seemed to question him. And he would always, if anybody ever got out of line, he'd have sessions, he called them. It's where he'd put you in a room and everybody would drill into your head that pretty much you're such an awful person. And you don't question David, you listen to David. You don't question David, you listen to David. And I just sat there silently. I just sat there silently and took it. I was afraid to leave the group because I was honestly afraid that David would have somebody kill me. And then he started having tests to test people's loyalty. He'd have people from the club He'd have people from the club make sacrifices for him. Like he'd have them go off and kill the neighbor's cat or something and bring it to him. And they would do some sort of ritual with the animals. He was having people do it every day to test their loyalty, and they were doing rituals with the animals they killed. I think everybody in the group believed that he was speaking through God, but I believe he was speaking through something else, man. And they started listening to everything he said. They started actually believing he was a prophet. And this club, this cult, were listening to everything he said, and I was pretty much just stuck with them because I was afraid to leave or even question them because I was afraid that somebody in the club might kill me or Dave would have somebody kill me. Little did I know, he was about to lead a very historical mass murder. It was actually crazy what he created. They were like literally worshiping him at his classes now. Like when he'd stay up there and he would preach, and they're like all worshiping him. They're worshiping him like he was a god. Hail the prophet! All hail the prophet! Yes, hail the prophet! Give into the night! All hail thy light! He would call himself a light. All hail the night, come into the light. You will be given the gift of a light. I will shine it upon you. And they're like, yes, all hail the light. Hail the prophet. And he laid out this plan one day. He wanted to he wanted to go back to the church that shunned him and kill everybody in the church. He wanted to kill everybody in the church and take over the church for himself, for a place for Christ to come back to. And all these people were like feeding into it, and he started handing guns around. Just so you know I'm serious, he said. And everybody was like, yes, hail the light. Come into the night. I'll hail thy light. Cometh with me into the night. As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. And they were just like feeding into him. I don't get why they listened to him. It's like they slowly started listening to them more and more as the classes went on, and this is like an 8-month conclusion of all that. They're all like feeding out of his hand and doing everything for him, and they're all turning on each other, listening to him, doing what he says. You don't question David. Do what David says. It's like everybody just knew not to question David and listen to everything he said. And I knew then I had to get out of there, but I didn't know how to sneak out. It's like everybody was keeping an eye on each other, and every time somebody stepped out of line, they would tell David, and I didn't want to be a part of another session again. Remember last time they locked me in there for like 8 hours and just kept drilling it into my head how awful a person I am. David is a prophet of God. David is speaking through God, and everybody actually believed in his delusion. He was delusional, man. And he had everybody else believing in his delusion. And it's like, I think he was actually I I think everybody in the group were actually starting to become like him, like part of like a demonic cult. I don't know how to explain it, man. It's like he just kept getting more power over them every single class they had, and he started making them sacrifice animals and doing like rituals, and it was like they kept getting further and further underneath him. That's the best way I can think of to describe it. And then it happened. I knew I had to get out of there, but I couldn't escape. It's like everybody else is blinded by his delusion, but I wasn't. And then one night, he said it's time. And there was like, come into the night, all hail thy light. Hail the prophet, hail the night, hail the prophet, come into the light, all hail the night. And he gave them all guns. And they all started marching. They were all like behind him. And I didn't know what to do. He handed me a gun. And I was like thinking, how am I going to get out of this? And I didn't know the answer. But next thing you know, we're following him to the church. And we went through the door. And they were all following him like little puppy dogs. And they started shooting everybody, and they started shooting everybody in the benches. And he pointed a gun at the pastor that shunned him, and told him, "You stay right there. I got a special plan for you." And they literally killed everybody else in the church. It happened so quick. They started shooting them. It was like so freaking quick, man. Like I said, he had a cult of like 80 people probably. Of people that used to be members of a church. And they killed everybody in there, but left the pastor alive. We must sacrifice him. We must sacrifice him, my lambs. That's what he used to call everybody, his lambs. And they literally tied him to the cross. And they set it on, and he was about to set it on fire, and I didn't know what to do, so I didn't shoot anyone. I was just watching all this, and I pointed the gun at him. I'm like, you're not going to do that. And the next thing you know, something hits me on the back of the head. And I fall to the ground. One of the members hit me in the back of the head, and he set the fire. He set the fire, and the church lit up. And police were surrounding the church that sparked up in flames. I survived. Because the cops got there, and the cult members started shooting at the cops. It was a big shootout, and a lot of people died that day. Over 120 people died that freaking day. And I was just like hiding underneath the bench, and the church was in flames during this big shootout. They actually brought the military and the SWAT team, because like I said, he had a cult of 80 people. And the military came in and restored order after about an hour shootout. Literally, it was a shootout for an hour. And he was running. They basically brought down all of his cult members. They had to shoot them down. They would not go down silently. and they were resisting arrest, and he was like running for the woods. Then all of a sudden I looked, I was in handcuffs. I looked and I heard a loud bang, a gunshot come from the bushes that he was running into. He shot himself. Caused over 130 deaths. The cult of the false prophet.